The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of the private airport terminal as Harold Weatherby adjusted his worn straw hat and shifted the weight of his canvas bag from one shoulder to the other. The fabric of his overalls had softened with countless washings, and the green cotton shirt beneath bore the honest stains of a man who worked with his hands. Harold had flown in from his sprawling ranch in Montana, where he raised organic cattle and grew heirloom vegetables that fed families across 3 states. His calloused fingers told the story of decades spent coaxing life from the earth, yet few people would guess that this humble farmer was worth more than most small countries as he approached the sleek reception. Desk 2. Young women in crisp uniforms exchanged glances. Their smiles faltered as they took in his appearance. Margaret, the older of the two, leaned toward her colleague Sarah and whispered something behind her manicured hand. Both women straightened as Harold drew near. "Good morning, ladies," Harold said with the gentle warmth that came naturally to him after years of greeting neighbors and strangers alike. "I believe someone was supposed to meet me here. My name is Harold Weatherby." Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly as she scanned her computer screen. Her fingers clicked across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. "I'm sorry, sir, but I don't see any arrangements under that name. Are you perhaps here to pick up someone else?" Harold chuckled, softly, a sound like autumn leaves rustling in a gentle breeze. "No, miss, I'm the one being picked up. My business partner arranged for transportation. He said someone would be here at 9:30. Sarah glanced at the ornate clock on the wall, then back at Harold. Her voice carried a note of barely concealed condescension. "Sir, this is a private terminal for our premium clients. Perhaps you're looking for the main airport? It's about 20 miles back down the highway." The kindness in Harold's eyes never wavered, though something deeper flickered there for just a moment. "I appreciate your concern, but I'm quite certain this is where I'm supposed to be. My partner Marcus specifically mentioned this terminal. He said it would be more convenient for our meeting." Margaret's laugh was sharp and brittle like ice cracking on a winter pond. "Marcus Thompson, the investment banker I hardly think someone like him would be meeting with." She paused, her gaze sweeping over Harold's simple clothes. "Someone in your line of work?" Harold nodded patiently. "Marcus is indeed an investment banker and a good friend of mine for over 30 years. We went to college together, though I suspect he dresses a bit differently these days." The two women exchanged another look, this one filled with barely suppressed amusement. Sarah stepped forward, her smile tight and professional. "Sir, I really think there's been some mistake. Perhaps if you called your friend to clarify the arrangements." Before Harold could respond, the terminal's glass doors slid open with a soft whisper. A tall man in an impeccably tailored navy suit strode in his shoes, clicking against the marble floor with purposeful steps. Marcus Thompson's silver hair was perfectly styled, and his smile could have illuminated the entire building. "Harold," Marcus called out, his voice booming with genuine affection. "There's my old friend. Sorry I'm a few minutes late." The board meeting ran longer than expected. Margaret and Sarah watched in stunned silence as Marcus approached Harold with arms outstretched. The two men embraced with the easy familiarity of lifelong friendship, Marcus stepping back to grip Harold's shoulders. "You haven't changed a bit," Marcus said with a laugh. "Still, wearing those lucky overalls, I see." Harold's eyes crinkled with amusement. "These old things have served me well. Can't see any reason to change now. Besides, they're comfortable for traveling." Marcus turned toward the reception desk where Margaret and Sarah stood frozen in place, their faces pale with dawning realization. "Ladies, I trust you've been taking good care of my friend here. Harold is one of the most important people I know." Margaret's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Mr. Thompson, we didn't realize we thought—" "You thought what exactly?" Marcus asked, his tone remaining pleasant, though something steely entered his eyes. Sarah stammered, "We just assumed, his clothes, we didn't think." Harold raised a gentle hand. "Marcus, it's quite all right. They were just doing their job, trying to make sure the right people were in the right place." But Marcus wasn't finished. "Harold, you're far too kind. These ladies made assumptions based on appearances, and that's something we simply cannot tolerate in business or in life." Harold studied the two young women who now looked as though they wished the marble floor would open and swallow them whole. He saw something familiar in their faces, the same mixture of embarrassment and fear. He'd seen in his own children's eyes decades ago when they'd made similar mistakes, you know. Harold said, his voice taking on the tone of a grandfather sharing wisdom with beloved grandchildren. I remember when my daughter Emma was about your age. She was working at a hotel in Denver, and one day a man came in wearing dirty work clothes and boots covered in mud. Emma assumed he was there to make a delivery and directed him to the service entrance. Margaret and Sarah listened with growing mortification as Harold continued his story. Turns out that man was the hotel owner. He'd been inspecting a construction site he owned across town and had come to check on his property. Emma was mortified, but instead of firing her, he sat her down and told her something I've never forgotten. He said that every person who walks through your door has a story, and most of those stories are far more interesting than what meets the eye. Harold's voice grew warmer still. Emma learned that day to look beyond the surface to see people as they truly are, rather than as they appear. She's now the general manager of that very same hotel, and she's never forgotten that lesson. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Mr. Weatherby, we're so sorry, we shouldn't have judged you, we shouldn't have assumed, child, Harold said gently. We all make assumptions, it's human nature. The important thing is what we do after we realize we've made them. Do we double down on our mistakes, or do we learn and grow? Margaret stepped forward, her professional composure cracking to reveal genuine remorse. Is there anything we can do to make this right? Harold considered this for a moment, then smiled. Actually, there is something. The next time someone walks through those doors, someone who might not look like your typical client, I want you to remember this conversation. Remember that appearances can be deceiving, and that kindness costs nothing, but means everything. Marcus watched this exchange with growing admiration. For his old friend, Harold, you never cease to amaze me. Most people would demand an apology or file a complaint, but here you are turning this into a teaching moment. What good would anger do? Harold asked. These young ladies have learned something valuable today, and they'll be better people for it. That's worth far more than any apology. As they prepared to leave, Harold turned back to Margaret and Sarah. You know, I started my business with nothing but a small plot of land and a willingness to work hard. I made plenty of mistakes along the way, and I was fortunate to meet people who showed me grace instead of judgment. Those acts of kindness shaped who I became. Sarah wiped her eyes. Thank you, Mr. Weatherby, for being so understanding, for teaching us something important. We won't forget this lesson, Margaret added. Any of it. Harold smiled and tipped his worn straw hat. I believe you won't, and that makes me glad. As the two men walked toward the exit, Marcus shook his head in wonder. Harold, in all my years in business, I've never seen anyone handle a situation like that. You turned what could have been an ugly confrontation into a moment of genuine human connection. Harold adjusted his canvas bag as they stepped out, into the warm morning air. Marcus, we're all just trying to find our way in this world. Sometimes we stumble, sometimes we judge too quickly, sometimes we let fear or ignorance guide our actions. But if we can show each other a little grace, a little understanding, then maybe we can make the world a bit kinder. The private jet waited on the tarmac, its sleek white surface gleaming in the sunlight. As they approached the aircraft, Harold paused to admire a small wildflower growing through a crack in the concrete. Look at that, he said with quiet wonder. Life finding a way even in the most unlikely places. Marcus followed his gaze and smiled. You know, Harold, that's exactly what you do. You find ways to plant seeds of kindness in the most unlikely situations. Back there with those young women, you could have let them continue in their embarrassment. But instead, you helped them grow. Harold knelt down to examine the flower more closely, its delicate petals a brilliant yellow against the gray concrete. Every mistake is a chance to become better. Every moment of judgment is an opportunity to choose compassion instead. We can't control how others see us, but we can control how we respond to their seeing. As they boarded the plane, Harold nodded to the pilot and crew members with the same warm respect he'd shown everyone else that morning. The crew responded with genuine smiles, clearly sensing something different about this passenger in his simple clothes and worn hat during the flight. Marcus pulled out his tablet to review business documents but found himself watching Harold instead. His old friend gazed out the window at the patchwork of fields and forests below his expression, peaceful and content. "Harold," Marcus said finally, "I have to ask, don't you ever get tired of being so patient, so understanding? Doesn't it bother you when people judge you based on your appearance?" Harold turned from the window, his weathered FA